Welcome to our pod, and by that I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah.
I'm Laura.
And we are two best friends who do a deep dive into a new book series, one book at a time. Right now we are ba-dum-bum in the year of the Dresden.
The Dresden.
And we're discussing the themes and characters of Death Masks, a book I have very little to say about in this episode.
And also, were there any death masks? I've yet to figure out why it was titled this.
So I kept Googling Death Mask without Jim Butcher. Don't know why I did that, but it would
That
always
seems like a
pop
bad
up
idea.
with the article of a death mask. And a death mask is a likeness, typically in wax or plaster cast, of a person's face after their death, usually made by taking a cast or impression from the corpse.
Okay, so like the demon and father. Okay,
yeah, I guess that's what it's supposed to be. But what a wild ride to be like, with this one random plot point.
But you think
Death
we would
masks.
explain that?
No. Why would you? Like,
honestly, like that would have made a lot of sense and been kind of a neat way to tie into like a beginning of a chapter or something in that lyrical way that Butcher does. But
yeah,
whatever.
and I wondered if it was also like,
let people Google it.
Yeah, just let people. He totally knew people were going to be Googling this 15 years later and see that it was for death
when
masks.
He's writing this, he's like, you know what? This would be a fun thing if people want to research this on their own time. Like,
I'm so sorry. 21 years later, back in 2003, he was like, well, people will ask Jeeves this right away.
There are people who are going out and drinking at a bar for the first time.
Pulling off the encyclopedia books and doing it. But before we get into this very, very vague novel, Laura, what are you reading, watching, and or enjoying?
So I told you about this book a little bit that I recently listened to. It's a fun audiobook, but it's part of the Mead Mishaps series by Kimberly Lemming. That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon, which has a really cool cover that everyone will recognize. There's actually a couple covers, but the one that I like better is the one that's a little less cartoonish, where there's this woman with like beautiful pink hair that is holding a mug of some sort of drink, and she's like in a near embrace with this almost shirtless man who has long flowing hair and is looking down at her. He's got pointed ears and maybe some horns, and there's like all these like plants around them that are seemingly swirling in the wind. That is the cover I really like. But the book itself is almost like a D&D campaign. I think, like, I don't know a lot about D&D, but I know just enough to understand, like,
you played it one time, as you said. I played it
once. There are glimmers of D&D in this book, which makes me think that either the author likes D&D or was kind of inspired by it or something. But the book itself follows a spice farmer named Cinnamon. Like, everyone in her family, they're all spice farmers, and they all have like different spice names, which is really cute. But Cinnamon is the female protagonist who ends up like in the middle of this quest with a demon that she randomly saves one drunken night. And they end up like going on this quest, and she learns that kind of the world as she thought it was is not as it seems. And they end up going
happens in books.
Right. But they end up going on like these different little side quests to defeat this evil witch that's like enslaving the demon that she saved. His name is Fallon. To slay this witch who's enslaving Fallon's people. And there's all these like little side quests where they like along their journey they meet with these people, and then they get farther down and they're meeting up with these people, and that's where I get all the D&D vibes, where it's like all these little missions that they're encountering and everything. Awesome. And we're bringing in new characters in this way, but it's a lot of fun, and it is spicy at times.
Did you hit your threshold this year?
I don't think that this is the spiciest of books, but it is pretty spicy. There were like a couple of times, like I was listening to this at work. There were a couple of times where I'm just like sitting there and people would walk by me and just like, I am listening to a sex scene and you're just doing your job.
And he ripped open her bodice and ran his fingers down her.
It's a little, well, a lot more than that. But
yeah, but I was trying to keep it a little bit PG for listeners. Yeah.
Okay. I thought Hannah was going to read us a sex scene, but But no, this is a really fun book. And I really liked the audiobook, honestly. I thought the narrator did a good job. I should actually look up to see who the narrator is because I like to give narrators credit
Yeah, you do.
because I
As you
don't
should.
think a lot of people acknowledge them.
Right.
Because like literally there's hours that are put into
I mean, it's
creating an
a
audiobook and I just feel like people deserve
narrator is
credit.
Hazel Addison, I believe.
Oh, thank you. I was trying to do this with one hand and it was not
Oh,
working out.
okay. From what I can see, it's Hazel Addison.
Perfect. Yeah, excellent job. I'm probably going to continue the series on audio. I have the ebook, but I was like, you know what? I have been having a hard time like reading anything physical or ebook wise. So I was like, you know what? I will listen to this. And it was a very fun listen. We'll definitely continue with the series. And I would recommend it to people who like D&D, people who don't mind lots of romance in their fantasy, and people who are really into romantasy. Like I think this is a very it's not like a super like there's obviously battles and stuff that occur and some tension and a quest, but it isn't along the lines of like everything is being very serious. We're taking all of this extremely seriously. It's more along the lines of like legends and lattes, even though there is like an enslaving witch. It's still more along the lines of legends and
And
lattes, where it's
Legends
like
and Lattes had like some bad stuff
lower
happen.
stakes, lower
Yeah.
stakes. You know what I mean? Where it feels a little bit lighter, it feels more fun, and the stakes are lowered in
Yeah.
terms of how we feel about it as a reader, I think.
That makes
It's not like
sense.
the entire world is going to end, but we are freeing some people who are being enslaved. So that's happening. But I really liked character Cinnamon. Cinnamon was awesome. And I thought Fallon was pretty fun. I did feel a little like there were at times when I was like a little like, okay, well, I get that he's a demon, but the whole like, you're mine type thing does
Yeah.
burn me a little bit when it comes to things, but I'm willing to overlook it because it's a fantasy book. And I get that that's a trope for a lot of fantasy and romance readers that they are really into the whole, you're mine, we are
Just reminds
one
me of
with
that
each
one time
other.
I read that awful book where they were into like sexy talk, and I realized like that will never
That you
not
realize you
make me
did not like
laugh.
sexy talk. Well,
It
there is a
just
little
like
sexy
call me
talk in this.
daddy. I'm like, why would I ever do that?
The worst. There is a little sexy talk in this, but I just think that Cinnamon was so much fun. Like I really love Sin, and I I think that I was willing to overlook some of the parts that I didn't like about Fallon because I like Sin so much. So it's a fun series, and I think the next one is likely, I'm going to guess that it's likely focusing on another sibling in her family.
Probably. Good call.
So I will be curious to see like what direction the author goes with it, but I think it would be fun to kind of stay within the same world, but we're following a different character within this family, finding love in this magical world.
Love to
So
see
that'll be
it.
fun. It kind of is like the direction the series was going with like different characters. I think reminds me a little bit of like Talia Hibbert, how she went from one sister
Ugh,
to the next in the Brown Sisters trilogy. So
you know how much I love that
yeah,
series. So,
but check out the Mead Mishaps series because, and you would like them too because it's a
oh yeah.
short audiobook. And I think that it would be good for like a car ride or something, you know, if you're having passengers, just warn them like this will have spice. But if you're by yourself, Hannah, I think you would like it. Like
Oh,
I
good.
think it's fun and yeah, a lot of fun. I
Good.
also read Hannah a book that you really liked, Shark Heart by Emily
Oh,
Habeck.
what a fun book.
That was another audiobook that I did. I did this one as a
Okay.
buddy read with my friend on Instagram. And I knew that you had liked this, and I wasn't really remembering what this was about when you had talked about it before. So I kind of went into this. I don't know why I was thinking that this was the one that it was like somebody is like swallowed more scientific one where somebody's like swallowed by a shark or something like that. But that's a
No,
different book. That's like
that's
one where somebody's
Whale
swallowed by a
Fall.
whale.
That's
Yeah.
Whale Fall, where he
And
is
so
swallowed by a
this
whale.
one really threw me for a loop because I was thinking of an entirely different book,
Wow,
entirely different. But
that's
as Hannah,
whiplash.
total whiplash because this was a lit fic about like this alternate reality where there's the possibility for people that they can actually turn into animals. They can
Hmm.
develop this type of disease, or I don't know, some people are born as animals too. So
Yeah.
like you can birth animals. There's a character who actually births some animals within the story, but it's a story that ends up being one that's multi-generational really because we follow these characters, Lewis and Ren, who are like recently married, and they find out that Lewis has received this diagnosis not long after they were married that he is going to turn into a shark, and they have to deal with like the ramifications of that. And it's sad to watch Ren kind of struggle to let go of Lewis and acknowledge
Hmm.
that he's not the person he was, that she can't save him or stop things from happening, even though she wants to. And it's also sad from like Lewis's perspective because he's losing himself. You know, he's starting to forget her. He's having a harder time controlling himself. And we do get glimpses of him after he like has completed his medical situation and his physical body turns into a great white shark. So that
Yeah.
was interesting, but I don't know that I was as interested in that part of it as I was interested and keyed in on Ren's story. And it's interesting to see her as like a caregiver. And then when you get further into the book, you start to get more of a backstory on Ren and see that not only has she gone through this with her husband, but as a child, her
Hmm.
mother had gone through a similar situation where her mother becomes like a Komodo
A
dragon or
Komodo
something.
drag. Yeah, it was Komodo
And
dragon.
it's also a devastating thing for her
Yeah.
to have to raise her daughter. She gives up a lot of things in order to raise her daughter because she's dealing with this diagnosis herself. And then Ren has a lot of resentment and guilt built up
Hmm.
surrounding her mother's diagnosis. And then for her to marry someone who receives a similar diagnosis, I thought that was like really well done and also heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And this is maybe the only book where we like I'm gonna spoil something here. So listeners, if you don't want spoilers for Shark Heart, please skip ahead like 5 minutes. But this is maybe the only book that I have read where there was a pregnancy trope that I enjoyed it. Because at the end of this book, we find out that Ren becomes pregnant
Hmm.
and she finally is able to have some happiness in her life.
Hmm.
And that's through like having a child and I wouldn't say it's necessarily just having a child, but it's having a family member,
Yes, it's
I
having
think is
connection. Like I
a
think you could have,
connection.
yes,
She
like a
could
connection to
probably have
someone
had this in
else.
another way too. We could have rewritten this another way where she finds another love. But I did appreciate that there was finally a happy ending for this
Hmm.
person who had been dealing with people who have chronic illness her entire life, that she had been a caregiver in one way or another for most of her life, had been dealing with a lot of struggles in terms of like all the hurdles that she had to go through to get herself through life because
Yeah.
there weren't people to support her in the way that other people were supported. So it was a really interesting and heartbreaking book, and I thought it was well done. I got a little confused with some of like the back and forth with the flashbacks, but overall, I thought like 5 stars for this book because it's just incredibly creative,
Yeah.
and I just really thought it was interesting from the standpoint of Ren and all the things that she had gone through in her life and how she was able to see the world in this like still positive light after all that she had been through and still be hopeful for her husband when he received a diagnosis after even being through that situation with her mother, and then to again finally have some happiness at the end. So that
Yeah.
was nice. But I was a little confused, Hannah. The father of her child was it was in I think it was said that it was Lewis's, but I was confused by the timing of that because
Yeah, I think it's a
it
little
seemed like
bit.
the truck driver was involved in there, but I'm a little confused by that.
Yeah, I think I don't know if we're supposed to know. I think that's kind of like this book
Hmm.
was that when I read it, like certain plot holes, I'm like, I'm not sure it matters because I think we're supposed to be thinking about
I'm
what it
willing to
means for
overlook it, and
Ren.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm willing to overlook it the same way I'm willing to overlook like the pregnancy trope of like this is a magical pregnancy that makes everyone happy.
Yeah.
But I do think that it's more of a way to And I also kind of thought of it because I saw somebody on Reddit talking about this book, and they said that they thought maybe it was not technically Lewis's child, but it, in her mind, her one night stand with this trucker, she was going to still say that it was Lewis's child, that it
Yeah.
wasn't going to be anybody but Lewis's because that's the person that she loves. So,
I think we live in a really weird time where with the internet and with everything else, we always want like one definable answer. But I think
mhm.
something that was really beautiful about this book, from what I can remember, is like Ren is such a messy character who's like dealing with grief in a messy way. And like you see
Dealing
what
with grief
she's
her entire
doing.
life.
Yeah. And you see her like trying to make sense of the world. And it's always a skewed perspective because it's Ren's perspective. But like,
Mhm.
I think it's so uniquely human. And I think that's why this book resonates with people because it's such a
Yeah.
wild tale. It's a magical realism, but through Ren and through the different characters, you get to see like a messy perspective and you get to see grief because like you even see Lewis's grief through his diagnosis and dealing with it. And like
Mhm.
it's
I think
never
we could
easy.
easily just swap out the disease for a disease that we know of now, like
Yeah.
that everyone is aware of. Say we swap in cancer for this, and you could still make this book and have it make sense. Like
Yeah.
there are children that are born with cancer. There are people who get cancer right after they're married. There are women who find out that they have cancer when they're young and deal with it for a long time. So I
Yeah.
think you could easily swap in something like that, and the book would have a very different tone. But because it has more of a, like you said, a magical realism
Yeah.
spin to it, that it's easier for readers to relate to the characters and
Yeah.
be more compassionate to all of the characters.
Yeah. I
So
agreed. Hard agreed.
it was really well done. And I also liked the audiobook. My husband got a little annoyed with the voices of
Oh
Lewis
no.
and his shark friend because they were a little annoying.
Did they talk like glug glug or
They talk like this,
Oh
and
no.
it was a little too
Oh,
cartoonish. So,
oh.
but it wasn't horrible. I understood why it like kind of was like that. So, I
Well,
do think that the actor did a good job with the narration too. But yeah, that was another book that I listened to. I've been just listening to so much
oh, same girl,
because
same.
it's just kind of hard for me at the moment to read physical things,
It's
but
almost like you and I both went through a reading slump at the same time, but we have to
well,
make content. So we just were like, well, audiobook
I will say
ahead.
though, I like to get some of these short audiobooks like this. They
hmm
are also a little bit easier for me. Like if the library has a book that's 7 hours, 8 hours, perfect. I It's something that I can listen to in 2 or 3 days or
Yeah,
less if I'm really feeling it. Because like Shark Heart, once I started listening to that, it was like, here we go. Because
I'm in
once
it.
you get into that, you don't want to stop. So I do appreciate that too about books, but there's like some audiobooks that I remember really loving that are extremely long. I'm thinking of like The Godfather, which is
Oh
like a
my gosh,
40 or
that has
50
to be so
hour
long. Yeah,
audiobook that I listened to. And I love The Godfather so much. Like that's one of my favorite books. But like I've been in a mood where picking up an audiobook that is that long is very daunting to me at the moment.
right.
So I wouldn't be able to do it. But these shorter audiobooks that are 7 or 8-ish hours long have been really great. But another
Awesome.
thing that I've been enjoying, Hannah, did you watch Chimp Crazy on
No, I
HBO?
can't bring myself to watch that. That looks awful.
You know, it's created by Eric Good, who created Tiger King, which was
Yeah.
another project that I enjoyed.
I mean, I did watch all of Tiger. Well, I watched season one of Tiger King. No one needed a season two of that.
Yeah, season 2 of Tiger King was a hot mess. They only did that just as a money grab, and they didn't really
Apparently there
have
was
much to talk about, it seemed like.
yeah, four and
But
they have a third season maybe? I don't
oh
know.
my, they
That's
don't need
what
a
a
third
wild
season.
time.
And that
Yeah.
was definitely a pandemic show where it was like everyone's locked inside. Let's watch this really strange situation with this man.
Well,
Okay.
I still go on record that I listened to a podcast about that before the documentary came out. So then I
Oh, I'm
rewatched it and I
sure.
was like, oh, I've already heard all of this. They did not go into his country album enough in that docuseries.
You may have heard about Tanya Haddix a little bit then too, because that's who this Chimp Crazy documentary centers on is Tanya Haddix, who is a woman who has like an extreme love for animals, especially exotic animals and primates.
Mm.
And I'm not gonna lie, when I'm watching this, like the documentarians were very kind to her, it felt like. And I think they tried to also, be like, but she is doing bad things too.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I did not really feel as much empathy for her as they did because it seemed like she was kind of purposely trying to be rebellious, not really taking into consideration the advice that was given to her by people, and then at the end of the series continued to just be like, you know what I'm gonna do? Not the thing that they told me to do. And that was a little
Mm.
frustrating. But the
Yeah.
show itself, the documentary is 4 episodes. And I think that if you enjoyed Tiger King, this is a little bit like Diet Tiger King because there's not
Got it.
near as many like wild out there things that are happening in this story, but there still are some out
Yeah.
there things that are happening. But Tanya Haddix, we get like background into her in these 4 episodes and learn more about like the current case that she's dealing with. And we also are like interspersed throughout these episodes getting these stories of people who owned chimpanzees and had tragic situations happen with these
Yeah.
chimpanzees, where one of the main focuses was Charla Nash, who was a woman who was attacked by a pet chimpanzee named Travis and was horribly, horribly mauled
Mm.
by Travis. And she was the woman who I think you might remember. This was like in the early 2000s, I believe, that she went on Oprah and had a veil over her face. And I remember it was like
Oh,
on her birthday, and Oprah like sang to her, and then they lifted the veil off of her face. Like I remember that happening. I
I
used to
do
watch a
not
lot of
remember
Oprah
that.
when I was in high
Okay,
school.
I rarely watched Oprah. I'm not gonna lie,
I
we were not
I
an
was
Oprah family.
we're not an Oprah family. I was an Oprah person. Like it was
Oh,
not my
got
family,
it.
it was me.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. I
But I
remember my
watched a
mom
lot of
was
Oprah.
huge into Dr. Phil. She got his like diet
Oh,
books and
interesting.
like yeah.
I watched a lot of
Unfortunately.
Oprah though, and I remember Charlotte being on this. And I remember her being on the Today Show and all this too. And so they had the story of Charlotte Nash that was pretty heavily focused on in the midst of all of Tanya Haddix's story. And Tanya ended up originally like getting involved with like chimpanzee ownership through just like showing up and volunteering at this woman in Missouri's place who owned a lot of chimpanzees. And
Okay.
then eventually this woman that she was helping out started to kind of struggle to keep up with her facility. She was getting too many chimps. They did not have the funds to improve the facility, and people started like turning them in because they're like, obviously these chimps are not getting the care that they receive.
Yeah.
And so, and that woman's name was Connie Casey. And I think she also was starting to get older and physically just not able to care for the chimps and was in a situation where it was like physically, if some kind of altercation were to happen, she would not be
She
able to
couldn't be in control.
handle it. Right.
Yeah.
So Tanya was there to kind of be that person who was a little more physically able to help with things. And when they started being persecuted for their facilities and everything, Tanya did try to improve the facilities, but it like wasn't enough. Like she painted the place like these really bright colors and everything. Almost to me, that was worse when I was like watching
Yeah.
the documentary. I was like, that would make me very sad to have to sit in this room that was like a primary color on each wall and have just a hammock in there, like, and then somebody just throwing in a Happy Meal a couple times a day for
Oh
me, like
God.
that, because that's what she was doing, is just
Yeah.
buying Happy Meals of chocolate milk for these animals. And then
Oh God.
she decides to get involved with this documentary crew in the midst of PETA persecuting her in this big like lawsuit and everything to try and get these
Yeah.
chimps proper care and out of this
God.
facility. And for whatever reason she's involved with this documentary crew, they have sent in like a proxy director that is dealing with her mainly. And Tanya starts like throwing out these things like, oh, and this is our chimp Tonka. And he has a heart condition. Like he had a massive stroke and now he has a heart condition. So he can't be with other chimps. And this is why he's over here in seclusion, blah, 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 blah. And we find out that like not long after she had taken the documentary crew through there, that the lawyers at PETA finally were able to like pursue the case enough and were able to say that they have to turn over, Connie Casey has to turn over ownership of all of those chimps and they need to be collected at this date or whatever. And so they end up going in and collecting these animals. They have marshals there and everything. It's like a huge crew and all this because the documentary crew, they were able to videotape this from afar.
Of
We
course.
find out that, of course, this chimp, Tonka, is not there
Of
uh,
course.
because he supposedly had a massive stroke and died the night before they
Oh
were coming
dear.
to collect all of these animals. And so then, like in the next episode, we're following. I'm going to go ahead and spoil this because this is something like this happened a long time ago.
Yeah.
Uh, like Charlotte Nash case happened a long time ago. This happened a, actually it was not a long time ago, but it was a couple years ago when this happened. So it's been all over the news. This is a documentary. This news has been available to people,
Right.
even though this is a fresh documentary. It's not like I'm spoiling the end
You
of
could Google this and it's
Game of
right there
Thrones.
for you.
Yes. But so in the next episode, we see Tanya, she's going through a Zoom court case or a Zoom trial, not a court case.
Yeah.
She's going through a Zoom trial and she's questioned on why Tonka wasn't there. And she starts like obnoxiously crying, Hannah. And the way she started obnoxiously crying like that and like, and she's like making like these high pitched noises, but there's no tears coming out or anything. And my husband and I just kind of looked at each other and were like, absolutely, she took him and has him somewhere. Like, why
Yeah.
they would even think that that is a real confession that he died and she had to bury him. Like, who could ever believe that? That's the worst acting in the world. And we knew like right away in the first episode when he was gone, we're like, oh, obviously she has. I'm like, this is very predictable. But the way that she thought she was fooling so many people is absolutely ridiculous to me
Oh
because
my God.
then at the end of this second episode, she had apparently been in communication with her psychic about that she needed to pick up food for Tonk
Oh
and says
God.
so it's like you told your psychic about this. Well, then she confides in the proxy director of the documentary that, oh yeah, actually I've got Tonka down in my basement and she has this enclosure in her basement where she's been keeping Tonka
Oh
and
my
he's locked up in
gosh.
there and she's been just bringing him chicken
Happy
McNuggets and
Meals.
chocolate
Yeah.
milk. Yeah, because that's what he likes. And so then, like the next episode, she starts talking about how she's going to euthanize him because he has a heart condition. He has a heart condition. And this is where the main director, this Eric Good, he's like, I don't know what to do at this point. They start having like this dilemma because they're trying to figure out like, do we turn her in? Because
Yeah.
we were going to try and use her as an outlet to get a hold of other people who were illegally handling primates, but now we're thinking that we're going to have to just
It's not worth
jeopardize
it.
that because
Yeah.
she's going to put down this chimp. So they did turn her in. PETA got involved again and they figured out there was nothing
Of
wrong
course
with
there
this chimp.
wasn't.
And she was just claiming all these things. The only thing that was wrong with him, he was overweight because she was
She
feeding
was
him
feeding
Happy
him.
Meals
Yeah.
multiple times a day. So they go and take him back,
Me
and
too, my
they,
guy.
oh my gosh, well they go and take Tonka, they get him out of there, and they take him to a sanctuary where he has a much better life on like this
Oh,
island with other chimps and is able to actually get outside and have like natural behaviors and habitat. So I think that was a happy ending for him that he was able to
yeah.
have that. I do think there's a lot of like back and forth in terms of like how they portray PETA, which I'm not going to get into on PETA because I do think even though like animal rights groups or just groups in general can have a lot of well-meaning tendencies, sometimes when you get involved in certain groups like this, even really well-meaning groups can have like can be doing things that are not the greatest as well.
Right.
Because I think even in the persecution of Tanya, I was a little bit questionable. Some of the things that they were doing seemed a little bit questionable to me in
Yeah.
terms of like why they had to stick her with all the lawyer fees, like $500,000 and things. And it was like
Mm,
they claimed, oh, well, it's because of this or whatever. I'm like, that seems unjustified. Like she had to
yeah.
pay for that too. I don't know. But
I mean, that's just lawyers, actually, like lawyers wanting to make their clients happy, and they
in
probably
the
get a lot of money from
end,
PETA.
I don't know.
Um, but like PETA is also, and always check your sources, always understand that
Yes,
I
like
think a
there are
lot of
organizations
people,
that I really like too, and I also still like have to take it with a grain of salt and be like, but they also have a lot of lawyers working for them that their sole job is to just look into people and try to
Mhm.
persecute things. And
Without
maybe,
recognizing the actual realities of owning farms and things like
yeah,
that. And
yeah, well,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So I'm
So
not going to
yeah.
get into that. And, but I do
That's
think
a
there's a,
behind the paywall discussion.
yeah, I do think that there's a lot to be said about like the portrayal of like how PETA dealt with some things. For about 99% of this documentary, I agreed with what they were doing. I do not think that exotic animals should be owned and treated the way that they were treated. I
No,
absolutely disagree with the things that like Tanya and a lot of these other people are doing because it's just not okay to be peddling these exotic animals like this. And it's
no,
unsafe
yeah,
for a
yeah.
lot of people too. But the documentary was really kind of just a hot mess.
Okay. Well, the only
I
thing I've seen is like people eating off them, and I'm like, I can't handle that right now. Like that just makes me
Eating
sick.
off them? What are you talking about?
Like seeing like the letting chips like lick their face or
Oh
something.
yeah, there's people that they showed in this that had pet chimps, like in the stories that they would show interspersed between here. That there are people that are kissing them. There was a woman right at the first episode that was, they were talking about how she was a chimp trainer, but when her daughter was born, she found a chimp that had been orphaned, and so she breastfed both of these babies.
Mm.
Her husband talked about how he went in one day and he saw her breastfeeding her daughter on one breast and the chimp on the other. And I'm like, I feel very uncomfortable with that, but
Uh, Here's the
okay.
thing, guys. I trained my dog not to lick me because I don't like dog slobber. It's a thing. And hearing that makes me a little bit sick. So
Yeah.
I have not
Hmm.
watched it yet. You may have convinced me. We may do a Patreon episode on this eventually, I'm
I
sure.
have so
But
many thoughts on it, seeing as I've talked about it for a good 20 minutes probably. I was gonna bring up another show, but I don't know if I have time now since
I
I
mean, if you think about it, how much do we have to say about this book right now?
that's fair.
So
You know what? So
go
the
ahead
other
and
thing
talk about another book.
so the other thing that I watched, which was absolute blast, and I think people should watch it, Agatha All Along.
Oh,
It
Laura's
was
watched two episodes of
Agatha
that
all
all
along.
along.
So the first two episodes, I think, so this is a spinoff, obviously, and it takes place like after the events of WandaVision, which WandaVision is so great. It
WandaVision
does
is
not get
the
talked about
best
enough.
property that they have done, maybe until Agatha All Along, apparently, because
Well,
I
this
really
is a spinoff,
adored.
and it's really smart. And I think it's just and this is only two episodes, so we'll see how the rest of the season goes. But two episodes in, I'm like, this is a smart thing that's actually like making some callbacks to WandaVision, but not like blatantly being like, we are WandaVision. That's why you're
Mm,
here. So I appreciate that a little bit, where it's like there are mentions of things that we knew from WandaVision, but it's not all about Wanda. But
yeah,
it's still like smart, and we're bringing in like these different witches and everything. I like the characters. I think Catherine Hahn is amazing.
Catherine
I
Hahn is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. But I just think that it's really like visually pretty. I loved the first episode, honestly. And I think it's just going to be a really smart show that's also got enough humor and enough like creativity put into it that it will find the right audience. It's not going to find the huge audience because I've seen before the show even came out, are all these people that were saying, Marvel is ruined, Marvel is back, Marvel is ruined. And like putting the shows that, I'm sure you've seen that meme where it's like
No, I
Marvel is
haven't.
back and there's like the
Laura and I have
Guardians of
done
the
the.
Galaxy Volume 3, and then it's like Marvel is ruined and it's probably something that a woman's in.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so then Marvel is ruined in that one. And then it's like the new Captain America movie, Marvel is back. And then it's like Agatha all along, Marvel is ruined. Of course it's ruined if there's a woman involved. But
Yeah.
I think that people that made that meme and like that meme, they will not be the audience for this limited series. But I do think that if you really liked WandaVision, you should watch Agatha All Along and give it a shot because at least in the first two episodes, it's trying to do something and it's, in my opinion, a smart show.
Yeah.
And I like it.
Nice to know.
Yeah. Hannah, what have you been watching
Well,
or
for
reading?
reading, I listened to Northwoods by Daniel Mason. Laura, I think you should listen to this book.
Okay.
It's a Laura book.
Is
So
it?
Northwoods is about a homestead pretty much. It's throughout the centuries. So it's about this like deeply idyllic single house in New England and all of the people who live in it. And so there are just like different moments where like in the first book or in the first part of the book, like these people are attacked by uh, indigenous people, which is unfortunate, but like they were attacked by them in their house who like take them out of the house and they leave behind this Bible. And then years later, there's a man who wants to grow apples. So he finds this homestead and he moves in with his two daughters and he builds this apple farm. And he's really obsessed with apples. And then it's his daughters, and then people who bought the house later. And it's this really weird, beautiful book about like just this moment in time for all of these people. And it's written so well. And it's like, it just like describes the apple making really well. It's just like very natural. And I feel like if you're into like science and things like that, you would really enjoy those portions of the novel. But it also has like
What's the
weird,
twist?
there's no twist. It's just like
Because
this
that just
history.
seems like very novel or
It
very normal novel, but
but like for some reason it's just really good, and like like the ghosts, the manifestations of the people who came before still remain, so like they're in conversation with the things that are happening. And so you have moments where like this woman starts like her son is he is believed to be schizophrenic, and here he's just seeing all the ghosts who live there, so we know that they're real but no one else knows that they're real.
Mhm.
And he disappears and she like thinks she found him, but did she? Because it's this random prisoner who started writing to her. And like it's just this really weird book, and it's really beautifully done. It's so well written and I really loved it. And like my sister-in-law read it first because it was for our book club. I didn't go to the book club, but I read it later on, and she was like obsessed with the man who just wanted to grow apples because he came back from the war. So he obviously has like PTSD. And he's like, I
Mhm.
ate an apple and it made me feel happy. And now I want to start my own apple farm. And his sister's like, so we think you've gone insane. And he's like, you've just never had a good apple.
Oh,
And so then he like takes his daughters and they build this apple farm together. And then one of them is like a huge bitch, and the other one's like pretty nice and just wants someone to love her.
oh.
And it's just moments where you're like it's unsettling in moments where it's unsettling, but it's amazing in other places. And there's like
Mhm.
this famous author who lives there, and this was my favorite part, and he's like writing love letters to like one of his best friends during a time where it was not accepted.
Mhm.
And it's just them like being like, I hope my wife doesn't find these letters because she'll know what we did on this apple farm. And my favorite line of it is like he writes this long letter of like, I can't believe like this beautiful love we have and how close I feel to you. And then he's like, P.S. You forgot your jacket. So like
Just random. Like,
I
okay,
can't, and
throw that in there.
like just realities of that time of like if you're gonna write someone a letter, you're gonna be like, P.S. You forgot your jacket. Like, and so it was just really good. I loved it so much. 5 stars, great for anyone. Like just it's if I'm looking at the description, it's like traversing cycles of history, nature, and even literature. Northwood shows the myriad magical ways in which we're connected to our environment and to one another. And I think that that's a very telling way to describe it. It's very
Mhm.
pretty. It's beautifully written. It's great lit fic. So I listened to that. I also listened another book club book. I'm really hitting it with the book club books lately. Lone Women by Victor Lavalle or Laval. So this is like a horror mystery novel. It's about this woman who the start of the novel it's a woman who's running away to I believe North Dakota or Montana. Uh
Mhm.
it's 1915 and Adelaide is like in trouble. You kind of find out she's running uh because her parents, she had to like leave them behind dead. And she's traveling with this like trunk with her, and she flees to Montana to start a new life, to become a homesteader. And she becomes like one of these like lone women who are taking advantage of the government's offer for free land. But like
Mhm.
there's this dark mystery of what's in her trunk, and she like talks to it and she's like, I can never be free of you. And so something
Mhm.
sinister is going on. And
Gross.
then throughout the rest of the novel, you kind of just like find out what's happening. And it's this really unique novel of like, it shows how
Somebody did die.
weirdly progressive, but how conservative new things can be. Cause like she's
Hmm.
going into Montana because she's like, this is an opportunity for women. But then later she is betrayed by the society who is like, we're so kind and we look out for each other. But also, you're a black woman and we don't give a shit about
Hmm.
you. And so it's always like this, it's a very unique novel of just showing like how hatred of people can ruin you and make you become a monster in and of yourself. And I
Hmm.
thought it was really well done for a kind of spooky, more Octobery read for anyone who's looking
Hmm.
for a more spooky read.
Sounds like a horror novel. Is it a
Yeah,
horror
it's
novel?
definitely a horror
Oh,
novel.
okay.
And so I would say definitely horror. And it's really well done. I thought it was very effective. I would say like it wasn't my favorite book. Towards the end, I was like,
Hmm.
we're kind of going on for a really long time, and I kind of just need to know how this ends. Like I'm done listening. So I do wish it was like
Hmm.
50 pages shorter. Um, but overall, it was a good time. I like a good horror novel. So yeah, definitely read that if you're getting into the more horror folly vibes that have come upon us.
A lot of people like to read seasonally, you know.
Yeah, so that's and then on the other flip coin, I listened to Joyful Recollections of Trauma by Paul Scheer.
How was it?
I really liked this book. I'm not usually a huge like
Memoir person, yeah.
no, at all. But Paul Scheer's lived like such a big life, and there are like things he's hinted at about like he has a podcast, everyone, How Did This Get Made? He's an actor. Um, and he's like lived quite the life, and he wrote this book because he's been doing this podcast for like 15 plus years, and people heard about
Hmm.
his childhood and they're like, what's happening? What's happening? Like, you need to write a book about it. And so he wrote this book, and like it's a really interesting look at someone's life and like the realities of it. Cause like
Hmm.
through it, you find out about like his abusive stepfather
Mm.
and like the thoughts of like what happened to him when he and his mom were living with this man and
Hmm.
also the trauma of like what comes with like they're from the Northeast and so his parents aren't always open to talking about it anymore
Hmm.
and like reflecting on loving your parents and having a good relationship with them when there's still people who have hurt you. I thought that was it was really interesting to read because he talks about how he like tried to bring it up to his dad once like this is all the stuff that was happening and his dad just like kind of was like I never knew it was that bad and he was like but you did I was telling you in the moment
No.
and the dad's just like no I never knew it was that bad and he's like I love my dad and he's like I think to him it would have never occurred for him to step in. And I don't know if he's ready to accept that. But I hope he knows that I'm always ready to have the conversation with him. Like, and he's like, and
And
it's
what
taught
a
me,
mature
yeah,
stance to have.
right. Like it's so amazing to kind of hear that. Cause I think, again, we live in a very specific time where I think a lot of people are very quick to be like, it's black or white, you do this, you do that. And like the world is much more complicated
Well,
than
and I
that.
think it's
People
also
hold
very
multitudes.
difficult to like give grace to the person who could have helped you out of a really
Yeah.
difficult situation, but was just
And he
kind of
kind
in
of
denial about it.
And he talks about like why his parents are that way. So he's like, yeah, from ages 3 to 6, I actually didn't know my parents were divorced. My dad
Hmm.
was coming home early in the morning to be with me. And then he would leave after I went to bed at night so
Mm.
that my routine was not disrupted. And he's like, so
Hmm.
like, I think there's a lot of love in there, even if I don't agree
Yeah.
with what they did.
Yeah.
And so I think he chooses to see the love in it rather
Yeah.
than the like hurt and I think that
Hmm.
that's wonderful and amazing and he talks about how it's like affected him with his own children where he's like we
Hmm.
don't keep things from our children we talk about it they know they can talk to me about it and he like talks about conversations he's had with his sons about like school shootings and things like
Mm.
that um and so I was just really fascinated by this book. I thought it was really well done for like deep parts
Yeah.
of his life that I don't think he's talked about much for someone who is like in my mind, I've consumed a lot of Paul Scheer content, and I
Hmm.
was shocked by how little he really talked about this stuff before. And so I
Sure.
really enjoyed it, and I thought it was really well done. He also talks about like his struggles with ADHD and his like trying to get on SNL and his meeting his
Mm.
wife and like how much she means to him, and like very much the beginning of their love story, which is like not a love story at all, where they just kind of rotated around each other for a really long time. And so
Hmm.
I think it's just very magical to see a very complicated, very unique person who is funny and witty. And yeah, so I really liked this book. I would recommend it to anyone. Um,
Awesome.
yeah. So, and then books I didn't listen to. I also finished The Forest Brims Over by Maru Ayase.
Oh yeah, you
I
talked
am
about this
sure I,
previously.
yeah, it is a book about a woman who eats a bunch of seeds and starts becoming a forest. This is a translation. It's very much about gender roles. So like this woman, that is the catalyst of this novel, but it's mostly about the people surrounding her until the very end, where it's like all these people witnessing something happening, and what their home lives are like. And it's very much about like how men treat their wives,
Hmm.
how women have to interact in the world, all these different things. And I thought it was really good until the very end where it lost me because it was a little too literal. So, like, her husband is this writer who created her as a character and just wrote about like their sex life and like made her this character instead of being with her. And then they like start talking, and it literally they start talking about what it's like to make a novel and the themes and issues you have with novel making and using people you know.
Hmm.
And I was like, well, this is just, you were so smart, and like underlying themes abound until the very end where you were like, do you want to know the themes of this book? And I was like, I knew the themes of this book. What are you talking about? Like,
That's a weird choice, honestly.
yeah, like I was just kind of like, I don't, what? And
Yeah.
so I didn't really like the end. Like I liked it so much more when it was like complicated and nuanced, and then it became not nuanced. And I loved the like magical realism of like her hiding in this forest that was overtaking their house, and like people
Hmm.
kept coming in and being like, why is this man drinking old coffee? And there's a forest up there that he won't walk into. And it had moments where it was like, well, this is about femininity, because like in the woman's forest, there are no flowers. And her husband was
Hmm.
like, he loved beauty, but wouldn't do any deep dives. But then it was just so literal at the end. I was like, well, this is just a big old bummer.
Yeah.
So I still gave it 4 stars because I do think the beginning of it was so well done, and it's 208 pages. So like,
Hmm.
I guess 2% of it was not fun, and it was the last couple pages. But I was so disappointed when I was reading it. I was like,
Yeah,
that's
that is
it?
kind of a
Like,
stinker.
yeah. So I didn't love that. Yeah, but for watching, I just finished the Hulu series Little Miss Innocent.
Oh, okay. How was that?
So it was interesting. I don't know how I feel about it because it's like something where I watched it and now I'm like, well, now I need to like read so much more about the case, because it's like this multi-episode about a woman named Caitlin Conley who was arrested for poisoning her ex-boyfriend's mom.
Oh my.
And she very much is like, I was framed, like this is just like a hatchet job. But she like worked with the mom, and the mom was poisoned. And they actually didn't think she was involved in the case at first. She was supposed to be like coming in to answer questions. And then she was like, well, is this about the poison? And she's like, and they're like, yeah. And someone had written a letter saying that the particular poison this woman was poisoned with was in the son's car under his seat. And so she admitted that she wrote the letter because he told her about the poison. But like,
Okay.
it's a really weird story where everyone around them, like, it's messy because the dad, after his wife just died, gets together with her sister. And so there were a ton of rumors that like they were together before and this
Hmm.
was like a romance gone wrong. But then the like police were like, yeah, we looked into it. And literally a couple weeks after the wife dies, he's like texting her, like, hey, how do I get to your house again? Because he was like coming over to talk to her. They're like, there's no evidence that they
What?
were in a relationship. Like there were like it looks like they got together afterwards and like, yeah, it's gross, but it's not illegal. And
Yeah.
so, but like because of that, the other sisters in the family are on this girl's side saying, like, we don't think she did it. We think it's the husband. And they don't really talk during this, but like we hear that they supported her. But then you hear from his kids who are like, we thought he might have done it, but then we got this evidence and now we don't think he did it. And so it's a very messy case, but they also have Caitlin, and she is untrustworthy as shit, Laura. Like,
Mm.
there are moments where I'm watching her and I'm like, oh my God, I think you did it. Because they're interviewing her. And there's like a moment where they're like, oh yeah, they got into a fight because she cheated on him. And she's like, I've never been with anyone else. And it's like, he found inappropriate text messages
But
with
we know
her
you
and another
have.
man. And we're like, that objectively sounds like you did cheat on him. All you had to
Right.
do was say that you cheated on him and I would trust you more. But like the evidence and
Isn't
like
it astonishing how if people would just be honest, even about shitty things, it would really improve their
their
situations?
trustworthiness. Yeah. And there was a moment where like they're like, well, did you kill Mary? And she goes, I'm sorry, I'm just uncomfortable. And I'm like, what's that? So it's so bizarre. You can't look away. I don't trust this woman. I
Hmm.
At first I was like, it sounds like she didn't do it. And then as I watched, I'm like, honey, I think you did it. Like, and so they think she did it because like the son was like done with her now and she
Hmm.
like wanted to pay back and they're like, well, she looks so innocent, she's so sweet. And I'm like, no, I actually kind of believe that like they had to do the prosecution twice, but like one of the guys on the jury like lived in one of the trailer parks that her dad owned, and so it's really and he's like, well, I never met him. And I was like, yeah, but you could still have too much overlap.
Yeah.
um, so it was a wild time. And I guess you know what, watch it because it's wild to
Okay.
have someone in an interview where you're like, oh, I think I actually was on your side until you started talking more. And now I don't think I think
I
you
like those
probably
type of
didn't.
things where you like switch your opinion, where you're like, oh yeah, they
Yeah.
portrayed it this way, and then all of a sudden you're like, nope,
Well, and it
don't know
was
why
like
I
a
thought
little
that.
too easy of like, well, he told me he put the poison under his seat. I'm like, if he told you he put poison under his seat and that he kept poison under his seat, what? What? No, no.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's and like she also claimed that like and like part of this is like the son does get blackout drunk a lot, it seems.
Oh. Hmm.
Um, but like at one point she reported a rape and then like they tried to call him and he was like, I have no memory of doing that, but like I don't think that happened. And she's like, just tell the truth, just tell the truth. And he's like, what are you talking about? And so it's like it's a little bit, there's definitely evidence there that's just a little bit wild.
Yeah,
Yeah. uh
that
it,
seems
it
very messy.
it's very messy. So honestly, watch it. You and I are really into the true crime right now, or like documentary, wild documentary stuff. Yeah. So I don't
I
know
do
what else
enjoy
I've been
documentary,
watching.
but I feel like I go in moods of like the type of documentary I like, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Oh no, I'm definitely in like true crime. The worse it is, the better. Like, give me all the bad TV right now. So
I have to be in a certain mood for true crime documentaries, but I'm not opposed to them. I just have to be in a certain mood for them, it seems like.
I get that.
I feel like
Um,
these animal ones where things are just bizarre, I'm very much drawn to bizarre.
That's fair. I think this one falls into bizarre. I actually think you would
Okay.
probably watch it with your husband and you both would be like, what is wrong with this woman?
I actually
Like,
really enjoy watching documentaries that get bizarre with my husband because that is not the type of show that he is drawn to or
right?
enjoys. So it elicits a response out of him where like I can watch some of my other shows like comedy shows or fantasy shows and he really doesn't comment too much. But if I put on one of these documentaries or I put on Love is Blind, I'm getting the feedback.
Right.
And I appreciate that feedback because it's funny to me.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to enjoy it. No, I definitely sat on my bed not intending to watch an entire season of Little Miss Innocent, and I did
Uh,
it. So, and
yeah.
I've tried to watch Dateline recently, but it doesn't have the same, like lots of people love Dateline, and I just
Hmm.
feel like it's not for me. Like I don't
Hmm.
like
I've
something
never
about
watched
it.
Dateline.
I've never watched it either, but everyone's always like, it's so good. And I tried to watch it and I'm
Interesting.
like, I don't know. I kind of want to know like a beginning, middle, end. And I feel like sometimes
Mm,
they're like, we're at the beginning of it all. And I'm like, well, I don't care about that. I want to know what happened.
sure.
Um, but anyways, shall we dive into bum bum the year of the Dresden?
Let's do it.
So,
So we know that Jim Butcher wanted us to research a little too much to figure out why the book was titled this, because I would have had no idea. why
Yeah,
that was called Death Masks.
I mean, outside of me accidentally always Googling it when I was trying to look at the plot to make sure I
Hmm.
understood. Um, yeah, I would not have known that that was the reason it was called Death Masks, or if that is actually the reason he wanted to call it Death Masks. That's just what those are
It may
called.
have
It
just
doesn't
been he
mean,
stumbled into it.
yeah, he may have just been like, there's lots of death and there's masks, but there aren't masks, sir. There were
No.
masks like 2 books ago at the vampire.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like the hiddenness of that one vampire who wants to take him down, Ortega, where it's like, well, he's hiding what
Honestly,
he's.
Hannah, I think it's exactly what you looked up that we're supposed to know that it's death masks because that demon was hiding in Father Vincent's body
That's
or
so
just
true.
disguising himself as Father
But
Vincent,
also
whatever.
talk about like the easiest thing to call is like Father Vincent is a bad guy. Like
You called it like so early on, and I was like, I mean, we know he's a bad guy. Did you call him being a demon also? I can't remember.
probably. I just remember
And
being
I was
like,
just
this
like,
man
I
is
knew he was a bad
untrustworthy.
guy, but I was just like, how did she know that so soon?
Because he was so wildly random and like did not care enough about the church. I think that's the thing. It's like I'm like, look, I don't trust Jim Butcher enough to be like, this is churchmen. All the other churchmen we have met are the most churchiest of churchmen, and this one was supposed to be very churchy, and he just seemed to be about Shroud. And I was like, well, I don't trust that. Like, why would I trust that?
It just seemed to be about Shroud. His
Uh,
personality was Shroud.
Shroud. He was shrouded in no
Shroud.
mystery at all. So,
Fair.
um,
Fair. Play on words. I like it. I actually kind of did not, I don't know. I felt like this book was weird because it had to bring in all this vampire stuff again, which I did not need. Like all the stuff with Ortega, why was this included? Why was this
it
duel in there? Like, I get it, this vampire thing is something that is just going to be continually expanded upon. Can we just have a simply vampire book? Is the next book simply vampires? I would
he
just want.
does love to add other things besides vampires. He's very much like the you don't like the vampire storyline? Here's another one for
Well,
you.
no, it's like the opposite though, where it's like he's like, oh, this is a story about ghosts. Never mind, it's actually vampires. Or it's like in this one, it's like this is a story about demons, but also vampires. And it's like, I do not care about these damn vampires. Give me Full Moon where it's only about loop gurus and werewolves.
You know
I want
what's
these vampires out.
you know what's also really frustrating about the vampire storyline though? Is
That
we're
it's
kind of back
annoying
to
or
square one where we were 2 books ago.
where there's been like no
There's
movement,
no
no
movement.
resolution at
There's no
all that's
movement.
happened.
There's no like one vampire
We just
died.
continue to hear that they're still at odds with each other. Okay.
Yeah, where it's like, well, I defeated him, but that means we're in a draw. And I'm like, well, then why did we have
Yeah,
the
it's like the
battle in the
vampire
first
Cold
place?
War.
Yeah, like the vampire Cold War.
It literally is.
Oh, the vampire Cold War.
Super
Um,
annoying.
I was gonna say who was the president during the vampire Cold
I'm
War?
sure like all these people
Harry
listening are like,
Truman.
this woman hates vampires. She should not be talking about vampire books. And to
Harry
that I
Truman,
say,
Harry Dresden. Maybe Jim Butcher just really likes a Cold War.
yeah, it all fits.
It
It's all
all fits.
connected.
Truman, Dresden,
I
two
just feel like
syllables.
this book, the vampire-ness of it all is so annoying to me. It's like taking all of the most annoying things about vampires and just continuing to throw them at you. And I'm just
Also, how
not,
did they get into Wrigley Field? That just seems like it was like,
I don't know.
let's go to Chicago. Let's go where Michael lives at his vast palatial home.
And the
Like,
other thing I'm like a little annoyed with, like, so I didn't mind Susan too much in this novel. Her sex scene with Harry was not great.
unfortunate. No.
Not great. Not great.
Yeah.
But I didn't mind her too much in this because I like Susan, but I also think like we're still again trying too hard to make this about vampires.
You could just make it about Susan. Like, it could be
Yes,
her
just
coming to
make it
town to
about
quit her
Susan.
job.
And it's literally just like her continuing to be drawn back into this vampire situation and it's just like stop making it about the vampire clan, or what are they? They're not clans. What are they? Councils. Red
Yeah.
council, white council.
Court.
Yes.
Yeah.
Courts. Yes. Courts. Quit making it about these courts and just make it about Susan because she's gone through a terrible thing. Make it
Yeah.
about her. And
I
honestly, the
don't
group that she's involved with is fairly interesting, even though it's got somewhat vibes of Madame Web to it.
they really
I'm
ripped off Madame Web in this book.
which, Jim Butcher is a Spider-Man fan, so
Yeah,
it could
well,
be. But it does have Madame Web vibes to it. But I do think that like she has things that are interesting about her, and she is worth talking about outside of like we have to figure out this vampire war. Who wants to hear about that vampire war? Not me.
I don't understand why they're so obsessed with the like why like again,
And
this
also the
book.
vampire characters are so obnoxious too. Like I know that we're supposed to even like Thomas. I don't
Oh,
like Thomas.
who likes Thomas though? Like, are we
I
supposed
think
to
he's
like
supposed to be like
Thomas?
an endearing vampire character that we're like, oh, he's on Harry's side.
I know a
I don't
spoiler
like
about
Thomas.
Thomas and it makes me really upset, so I'm not going to talk about it.
Great. Great.
Hannah accidentally pulled up something and they had one sentence and I was like, you've got to be
Great.
freaking kidding me.
Great.
Um, so I
Great.
find Thomas ridiculous and I don't find him
Ortega
like,
was ridiculous too. Like they're
yeah.
just like over the top with their vampireness and the like villainy of it all, and I just don't
Well,
enjoy
and
it.
again, you could cut out this entire third. Susan came back. He still finds out that she's part of this St. Gilles clan.
Hmm.
And that's fine. Everything could still be at square one. You didn't need this entire third of the plot. And
Yes.
if you cut that out, we would get more about Anna, about the church mice. Because,
Yes.
like, you kill off two out of three of those very interesting
And we
characters
maybe wouldn't
right
have had such
away.
a rushed ending on this train where I'm like, what the heck is happening? Oh, there was a bomb. Oh, there was this. Oh, there was what? There's a random
Oh,
character in
they
here.
shut down the airport, so they had to move to a train. Like, that took
It was a
two
wild ride to keep
reads
track of all of
for
that.
me to even realize, like, I was like, why are they on a train now? And I was like, oh, they shut down the
Shut
airport.
down the airport, had to run to the train station. But even just on the train itself, things were happening at so quick a pace that I think if we would have cut out some of this stupid vampire duel crap, we could have had more on
At
the
one point,
train for the
Harry's in
actual
like
part of the plot that was maybe supposed to be the important part.
at one point, like Harry's underwater, and I'm like, how did he get here?
Right?
I this book was just like so weirdly plotted because we had that entire third. Like, if you want to
The
write
duel
that,
needed to be like totally removed. All the Ortega duel stuff, I would have pulled that out.
we're like 5 books in. We no longer need you to shove this many plots in for us to buy
Nope.
in. We're bought in. Like,
And it's also like a little disappointing when it's like Summer Night was so freaking good.
I know. And this book was such a disappointment.
And he went back to making it a hot mess.
And then you have like it's again, if we cut out all the vampires, I just wish we had more time with people on the page because like Shiro
Yes.
is an
We
interesting
need to talk about
character.
Shiro because this is just a really unfortunate portrayal, honestly. It's very stereotypical.
Yes.
It's a token Chinese man who is or Japanese. Was he Japanese? I can't remember.
I honestly have no memory and I don't
Honestly,
think
just token Asian man
I
is what it's
yeah.
what has happened. But he's then just thrown away for Harry to save Harry. And we learned that obviously he was dealing with cancer, and that's why he was totally cool sacrificing himself for Harry. And I just was really annoyed by the whole thing where it's like even the voice that was used to portray him in the audiobooks was
Mm,
bad. It was just extremely stereotypical in a very bad way. And I just
he
like,
is
why did we have
Japanese.
to Japanese? Okay.
Yeah.
Why did we have to just bring in this character just to throw him out instantly and make him just a token Japanese character who, I'm just
And he's definitely
extremely
like
disappointed by the whole thing.
the magical minority trope at this
Oh,
point. Like
exactly.
he pops up to help Harry. Harry's like, "Who's this old man who can do things
And
with
I
the
will also say
sword?"
that probably also this falls into the realm of, I think Asian people are classified as the mystical character more often
Yes.
than other minority groups too.
Yeah. And I don't understand. I don't understand why we decided to like have these men come in who are there just to show you how amazing Michael still is, even and
Oh
then
my
like write
gosh.
Michael off the page so often and have these characters who like are just sidekicks and they're also the two minority characters who have popped
Yes.
up who have any actual time on the page between Sonya and
Hmm.
Shiro. Like I don't get it
It's a
why
bad choice. It's a
it's a bad
really bad choice.
I'm like, if we give him any props, like props to him for like making Michael be the boring white man, but also that means he's the one who's going to stick around because like you're not
Hmm.
going to have these other two men stick around for very long. Like Sonya's going to be coming in and out if he even comes up again. Like
Yeah.
that's it. It's it's very frustrating.
Yeah, it was honestly the most annoying part of this book, honestly, was the whole Shiro thing for me. And
Yeah.
I was just disappointed by it because it was like, I do think that it could have, like, Shiro, if he was a character that would have been built into the series permanently, could have had a lot of cool things
Hmm.
happen. But I just don't like the fridging of a character and also then the excuse of it all where it's like, well, he was already dying of cancer. Like, sure, sure.
I wrote you a note, Harry, a man I barely know. That's like a
And
trope
I
I
respect you
really
so much. I also hate that too, that all of these people know Harry for 5 minutes and then they respect him so much and think he's the most wonderful person ever.
this
Why?
we're going to have a TV Tuesday coming out about Shogun and like the amount of times I was like that woman barely knows you, get away from her. Like that is the Harry Dresden of it all where it's like they barely know you, get away from them. They're
Hmm.
fine. And I just don't like everyone is here to service the protagonist
Hmm.
without a good reason. Like it just doesn't
Yep.
feel reasonable enough to have this. I don't understand.
Michael is also like a frustrating character. I wouldn't say is as frustrating as before because we don't get him as much.
We literally never see him. He is stuck
Hmm.
in St. Louis.
Hmm.
Like
But it's annoying that he's still being crappy to Charity. So
he's a
well,
terrible husband. This is not a good
he's not
example of a
listening to her
husband.
at all.
Like, here's the thing. Harry, okay, Charity in this book, in the notes of the book, is supposed to be a hysterical woman who just can't give Harry enough credit. And then, like, he's such a good guy because he realizes why she's being mean to him. And there is part of me who's like, yeah, Charity, learn that your husband is the problem here, like, not his
Mhm.
shitty friend.
Yeah.
But
I
also,
mean, both
like,
things can be true. Harry can be
yeah,
bad, and also she needs to not always blame Harry and recognize
right.
that Michael is also wrong.
So, like, it's just between the two, I'm like, come on, Charity can't catch breaks. She's sitting there lugging in Diet Cokes for her family. And, like, we're just supposed to think she's such a blowhard. Like, it's the early
But at the same
2000s.
time, we're
It's,
also supposed to be like, but her daughter, they don't have a clue what's going on with their daughter who
oh
goes
my
to Catholic
gosh.
school and is putting on a makeup and wearing a pink what bra.
Oh my
How could we?
gosh.
And she says
With
inappropriate things to older men, which
with the
is,
tits fairy coming
I would
in.
say, which is disturbing.
Yeah,
That's maybe like, oh, the one thing that is like, well, thank goodness they didn't go down that road of like Harry being like, I am turned on by Michael's daughter. Like, good
but
that
we're
that
also
doesn't
supposed
happen.
to give him all of the benefit of the doubt because Harry knows not to hit on the 16-year-old girl.
I mean, I don't know if we would have known that he knows that. So I'm glad that it didn't go down that road. That's
Fair enough.
maybe, but you know what? We have the bar on the floor. So
Yeah, I don't know. It's ridiculous. I don't get it. I hated the Molly character coming in. I think she's here to
yeah,
stay because she's another woman and why don't we want
we gotta
more
have
like
some.
we gotta have some. So let's have the 16-year-old who is going to over sexualize herself so that we don't
Yes.
have to.
So then we can feel okay about it when we do it in the future.
And just like I don't know. It's very early 2003. Like this book reeks of 2003. I can put us back 21 years ago. this character would have been very edgy. People would have loved how hard ass she is and how she is
Ooh,
girl power,
changing in the
hashtag feminism.
treehouse.
Yeah. And but like when mom comes home, she's helping with the kids because she's a good daughter. Like,
It's almost
it's,
like Seventh Heaven episodes.
yeah, exactly. I was thinking more, Grounded for Life.
Never
I
watched
remember,
that, but
oh my
whatever.
God, I watched so much of Grounded for Life. But like, it's that kind of stuff where you're just sitting there like, okay, this is very early 2003. I can put us there where we had these tropes and we can still, in this day and age, say that's fucked up.
Yep,
Like, again, two things could be true.
yep.
Um, Characters we sort of disagree on. You didn't love the like young girl jokes about the archive. I actually was charmed by those. I didn't mind those. I hated,
Like the whole archive thing, it's like Butcher wanted to play it two ways, where he was like trying to make it like if he wanted to make it cutesy and do jokes, okay, but at the same time, I feel like I liked it better when he was being kind of cutesy surrounding like the fairies like Toot Toot and stuff. And
mm,
I feel like this was like he wants to play it both ways where it's like, haha, there's jokes like she's like a cute little person. And then also it's like, but no, take her very seriously. She's supposed to be taken seriously. She has all of the knowledge of the entire world. And I'm like, but what? Okay, I don't like this that we're getting whiplash over this.
I think I see what you're saying with like I hated the fact that he nicknames her Ivy. Like she seemed fine with the archive. We don't I never
Yeah,
like it in books where you have these supreme beings and we pretend they care about things like a name. Like
exactly.
um and because
I
she
also
probably
think
does
too,
it.
there's a tendency that Butcher has to like try to make a joke out of too many things and try to not dumb them down, but make them a little too familiar, you know what I mean? With like
Yeah.
nicknames for everyone. And it's like not everybody needs a nickname, Harry Dresden. I'm sorry. Like I have some people in my life that I do give nicknames to, but not every single person in my life needs to have a nickname. Like I'm th no.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from with that. I was charmed by it. I actually liked the like this is supposed to be magical realism. So having a girl who's like, I have
Mhm.
all the knowledge, but also I am 7 years old and I get tired. I'm like, I am also smart, but I get tired. So thank you for noticing. I think that stuff worked more for me than
Mhm.
it did for you. But you're right with like the nicknames like Ivy and stuff. I thought that was way too cutesy and you didn't need it. Like the archive
And
having
even like
multiple personality type things in one person, I think is realistic and interesting.
yeah.
But like cutesy, like, hello, Hannah Tristan. I just I liked the kitty part where she's like,
Mhm.
kitty. I'm like, yeah, smart people love cats. Like, that's great. Have fun. But like when he's like, you need a name, I'm like, Harry, you're putting your own
No,
personality on
yeah.
people. She's fine.
It's also just annoying to me from like the reader standpoint that the author is constantly doing this kind of stuff. Like it's hard enough to keep track of all these
Oh my
freaking characters.
gosh.
Quit giving people many
I
names.
mean, we literally found out that there are I'm not sure I found this out because I understood it, but I don't think I comprehended it. That there are 30 fallen angels in Judas's
Yeah.
30 denarii of silver. Totally missed that plot point. I was just like, oh yeah, there's lots of fallen angels. And I'm like, Hannah, how did you not know? Um, yeah. There's too much. We needed a little slower pacing. Like we've said like in a couple of these books, like, oh, there should have been a book in the between this. Oh, this shouldn't have been the same book. Like there's just so much shoved in here.
Yeah. It's I
I
don't
don't
know. I
know.
feel like if and I also am just gonna keep falling back on this. If we took out all the vampire duel stuff, there would have been room to expand on a lot of these things that were just confusing and rushed.
Yeah, I
Like,
agree.
I think all of the Shroud stuff would have been a lot better, and all of the things surrounding Anna and like the little mini like getaway with Susan and Harry to the auction, all of that could have been expanded upon and given a little more detail to help readers out because
Yeah.
it's when you have this many things going on, it's just too confusing.
Well, and
And then when
it's
we're trying a third thing to bring in Marconi into all of
oh
it,
my
like,
God, Marconi. But
no.
what if he had a dying daughter, Laura?
But what if?
But what if we humanized him? I'm like, Marconi is one of the most human people in this book. You want to know what I didn't need?
He is human.
Humanity.
Yeah.
Like, he's literally a human. He was fine. He is like, And like, I knew he was hiding something behind those eyes. I'm like, Harry, that's creepy. Don't say that.
It
Yeah,
also just like is a little annoying because that's another trope I feel like too, where it's like, you know why we should care about him? Because he has a sick kid. Like
because
that's
of a dying daughter. Don't many
his
men
kid's
have
sick.
daughters? And guess what? I don't like many men. So like, yeah.
So I also think it's weird too that from book to book, Marconi is getting involved himself directly in things and like I thought he had a gang. I thought he was like a gang leader. Like what? He's a mobster. Why isn't he like delegating some of this work?
I agree. I don't know. This is just so random. There's too much in here.
There's a
There's
lot. I will say,
yeah.
like, I
And
did
Marco, yeah, there's so
enjoy
many
the book
tropes.
overall, but when you start, the more I like start to think about it and like, tr like honestly, the only way to go about this book is to just go in and do like I went about it the wrong way because it's like I was taking notes, and if you
Hmm.
start to think about this book too much, you start to get confused.
Here's the thing though, I didn't take enough notes because I do the plots of these episodes and I did have to take plot notes later. And I listened to this via audio because I was traveling a lot for this book. And honestly, this is the book that sticks with me the least. Like, if I had to take an AR test on this, I would fail it because I physically do not
You know what? I
remember
wish we
much
could
of it.
find AR. There are like some books that people have created like AR tests
Oh my
for like
gosh.
for adults. I wish
I
we could find all the AR tests for the Jim Butcher books. We should take all of them.
I pitched it to Storygraph to start doing AR tests, and they were like,
Yes.
Thank you for that suggestion. We'll put it into like our idea pile." And I was like, "Really cool! I would write them for you."
I miss
But
AR
like,
tests.
I know I think it would be fun to have an adult AR test where you're just like, "How much
Yeah.
did I keep that book in my brain after I read it?" That's the thing is like this book did not stick with me at all, but
Hmm.
so much happened in it, and so much happened that I know is going to pay off in 5 books from now, and that's
And that's the
also
thing
what's
too, where it's like
frustrating.
I keep saying I want this vampire court stuff out. I want this vampire court stuff out. But at the same time, it's like I'm sure this will be brought up forever.
Yeah.
Like there's how many books? 36? Probably still talking about Ivy, our friend Ivy. And all of our like
Oh,
Thomas is obviously in the future because you know spoilers about him, so he's got a Wikipedia page that's substantial. Cool. Oh man. Were there any themes? What I always think about that when we talk about these books. Like we're just discussing the characters and everything.
I
I'm
mean,
like, are there ever any themes?
so I think there's the themes of like temptation because a lot of this is people who are giving in to temptation, like Harry and Susan give in to temptation, and it makes things messier. And Harry at the end of this novel keeps a coin and doesn't tell anyone about it
That's fair.
because it's temptation. And you have the temptation of like fucking over Ortega and the temptation
Mhm.
of the
Or
shroud.
continually screwing over not Susan, Karen Murphy, who he's always like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'll communicate with you
Well,
better.
that's
Nah,
that's not a temptation. That's just his reality every single day.
that's fair.
And so it's stuff like that. So I think like temptation is definitely one of them. I also think like there is something to be said about like Harry as
This
time
is
goes
also
on.
a change novel too,
Yeah.
because he has to let go of Susan,
Yes. And there's like me against the world, which is always something that Harry Dresden is interested in. So, like, you have the introduction of Dr. Waldo Butters, who is seen as a hack now that he's
which
telling the
is so
truth.
sad that his whole situation is kind of unfortunate that he was like forced out of his job and then they're like, oh, actually, we did that wrongfully. And I guess we'll
I
just let him
know.
work night shift now. What?
You know what this book taught me,
Sue.
though? Paul and I were talking about it because he's like, you kept calling him a coroner. And he's like, he's a medical examiner. And I'm like, aren't they the same thing? And technically, a coroner is like an elected official
Yeah,
who
they are
doesn't need to
elected.
be a
Hmm.
medical examiner
No, you
necessarily,
can
but they should
hire
be.
somebody to do
Yeah,
it.
but he is both a medical examiner and the night shift
Hmm.
coroner, so he's both.
Yeah.
But like yeah, his stuff is really sad. I'm very saddened by the fact that like he sees things and people just don't believe him. That
Yeah.
sucks. Um, but like, yeah, I just that there is like a disbelief me against the world. Harry always thinks it's him against the world. And I do think like the death masks is supposed to be something of like
Yeah.
seeing death and coming to terms with it. You have Anna Valmont who is wanting to live but
Yeah.
grieving the people who left her. But mostly I think it's about temptation in this book because it's a pretty one-to-one like, hey,
Yeah.
remember that there are fallen angels and they have pieces of silver and they're ready to sell
Well, and I
you
think you can
out.
also throw in like the wills of it all, like the strength of your will, because
Yeah.
Harry also has to have that test of his will with Ortega. So we learn time and time again that he is a strong-willed person. So
He's so
there's
strong
that
willed.
as well,
I
that
do
he can
think that
get through it all.
there's an overarching arc to Harry that in the beginning of the book, we talked about this. Like, he's 25, he thinks he's beleaguered, he thinks he's lived all this life. And slowly throughout the series, we're going to see him actually live the life he thought he did at step
Yeah.
one. So it's like, oh, I came from a bad background, so I have all of this. And it's like, actually, like, yes, you came from a horrible background.
My
You
thing
had
is,
a
are we
terrible
going to be
father.
annoyed with him when we get to that point? You know what I
I
mean?
mean,
Where it's like,
sure.
quit complaining about this, because I'm like, you know what? If he actually was a beleaguered person or whatever, I think it would be easier to like connect with this character. And I'm wondering, like, since we're going on this whole journey, I feel like we're going to have a lot less sympathy
Mm,
for him.
it's very fair. I don't know. I think we're gonna have to see. It'll be interesting to say the least.
Yeah. Any favorite moments or characters, Hannah?
I did like the archive. She was
Yeah.
probably my favorite. I also liked the discussion of Sonia being an agnostic who is like,
Yeah.
hey, just because you believe in the power of something doesn't mean you necessarily believe that there is an existence among it. And
Yeah.
it's like, those are interesting theories because like Harry himself judges Sonia hard for it. But I'm like,
Hmm.
Harry, you're agnostic. You've
Right.
seen so much of this world. I think it would be disingenuous to say like someone didn't know that there was an existence of angels and a potential god, but see everything that is complicated about the magical world
Hmm.
and be like, hey, there's probably even more to it than just
Yes.
this one being. That's interesting. Like,
Hmm.
so I did like Sonia. What about you?
My favorite was Martin,
Okay,
the driver.
because he was a good driver.
Yes.
Instead of
I
I'm a
could barely say
reckless
that with a straight
driver.
face.
uh
You know what?
there
Honestly, just I'm going to give all the stars to Martin because he messed with Harry and did it unintentionally. Harry was so paranoid about him for no reason, and for that, Martin gets all the stars.
Good.
Uh,
I'm glad.
I don't know. I didn't really have a favorite character, I don't think, in this book. I felt like there's just so many moments that were hard to keep track of that it was a little tricky for me to even say which character was my favorite, because honestly, the most time we spent with any of the characters was Shiro and Dresden, and I didn't like Shiro's portrayal, and I didn't like Dresden's portrayal. So
Yeah,
that was
it's not
tricky for me. I
great.
will say, like, in terms of like some of my favorite things, I did like that there were a lot of like media mentions throughout and like call outs to other things throughout the book, where there's like Spider-Man references, Lord of the Rings references, like I and like references to music and pop culture and stuff like I do actually like those type of things in books. So I think in an urban fantasy, it's fun to get that kind of stuff. So I did appreciate that. I do also admit that I am a little bit of a sucker for Harry being a bit obnoxious in tense moments and like singing like the underdog song, or like trying to make jokes. I know that I've complained about it before, but I have found myself starting to laugh at some of those moments, because what else am I going to laugh at?
I mean, Easter is canceled. They found the potty, Laura.
That was so long ago.
I know, but I could still remember it as very funny. I did like the underdog song. I like that, like Harry,
I also like
like
that they had a duel in the middle of Wrigley Field. Okay. And that Martin, or not Martin, that Michael lives in Wrigleyville in
oh
like a big
yeah.
mansion of a place. So
Oh my
cool.
gosh. And with the giant, like, oh, he built that. It's like, of course he did because
Yeah.
Michael is daddy. So he has to build something. I also feel like sometimes I like a book where Bob is not just the creepiest of all
Yeah.
creeps.
Hmm.
And I feel like he wasn't at his creepiest this book.
Yep.
So silver linings, you know?
It also felt like in this book we maybe weren't getting as much of Harry. Like in previous books, it's felt like Harry was really struggling with his mental health.
Yeah.
And I feel like this one maybe a little bit less of that, but I know that since this was a book where it's like not all things go together, that this was maybe I think the books also are kind of following Harry's mental health as well with like the ups and downs of it, which I think is an interesting thing too, because like we're seeing kind of some of not I'm thinking of like Summer Night, how it was a very tense book, but there was a lot of mental struggles that he was dealing with and a lot of fighting, continually pushing himself past the point of
Right.
what his body could handle physically. And then he ended up having to get a lot of help at the end and everything. And he was getting a lot of support. In this one, it feels like there's less support, but he has like a more hopeful nature to him in this book almost because Susan's back and
Yeah.
he's trying to see like how that could go and everything. But then it ends in a way where it's like, oh, it's not all things go together like toothpaste and orange juice, you know? And so it kind of makes me wonder if like in the next book we're going to see kind of a downtick in
Yeah.
how Harry is doing as far as like his mental space, because I think we can even kind of reflect some of Harry's decisions
Hmm.
into the way that he is feeling mentally, where if he's not feeling the greatest, he's going to make more rash decisions
Yeah.
that jeopardize him
Well,
and others.
Laura, the next book is called Blood Rights. Do you think it's going to be free of vampires?
They're never free of vampires.
8,000 books later, and we're like another vampire.
Oh man.
So I mean, all of the again, we're gonna always end this. These books are romps. We understand that they're meant
I
for
give four
fun,
stars.
and I did not.
I will say
I
I did have fun listening to it. My husband and
yeah.
I enjoyed listening to it. And just for that, I was like, you know what? We had fun with this. We laughed and we had a good time. When I started to look over my notes and talk this out with you more, Hannah, is when I started enjoying the book a lot less.
Oh,
When I had to
I'm
like
very sorry.
critically think about it. If you
Uh,
don't think about it, it's great.
oh my gosh. Dresden's White Council mentor Ebenezer McCoy wipes out Ortega's Latin America compound by crashing a satellite into it. Don't remember that happening.
Well, that happened in this book.
I apparently I don't remember that. I'm
That
on the
might be a spoiler.
Wikipedia page. No, it says I double checked. It's
It's
in
death
Death
masks?
Masks. Yeah. I don't remember
I know
that.
he talks to McCoy at one point, but I didn't remember
I know. Is that what he
because he
said?
said something like, "You need to just get out of there." At one point
Oh
to
my
Harry, he's like, "Just
gosh.
go to my brother's farm or whatever." And Harry's like, "No, the people of Chicago need me."
Yeah, it's probably because he blew up a compound with a satellite.
Interesting. Okay. Well.
Well, okay. Well, let us know if we're wrong. You could tell us over on our Discord. Please join our Discord. We enjoy it so, so very much. Also, if you are so inclined, follow us on most of the social platforms at OWWR Pod for Our Pod. You can also check out what we're doing over at ourpod.com and join us over there to check out our indie mission lineup this year. It's a little bit different.
Yep.
We are doing a matchup that we created ourselves, and we did a
Mhm.
knockout round ourselves. It has already been recorded. We
All
already
just
know.
randomized. So
Yeah, it's all just randomized, it's all on equal footing. And so check out that next week, guys. Next week we do our indie mission
yeah.
announcement
So
because
you will know who the
after the
indie winner
sixth book,
is
we are doing our indie mission, and then we will come
Mhm.
back to this later. It's going to be
later.
down the line.
The way that you paused, you're like, later.
Well, I don't know. We could do it, we could be like, oh gosh, book six, not enough Dresden. But we're gonna be taking a break, so that means that it is in fact time for indie mission. So join us
Mhm.
when we announce what the next book will be that we will be reading in November.
Yay.
Please also remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Rating, reviewing, and subscribing is a great way to get people to come to the podcast or just tell a
Mhm.
friend about us. We
Yeah.
appreciate
And
you
thanks for listening
all.
today. We
And if you
appreciate
ever
it.
want to, join us over on Patreon. We have $1, $3, $5, and $10 a month memberships. So check out which one works best for you.
Mhm.
Join us next week to read the first 14 chapters of Blood Rights.
14.
14. There are
Okay.
42 chapters in this book. So we're
Math
reading
is
chapters
hard for me.
1 through 14. Would Laura ever do the math to figure that out?
No.
Never.
No.
She
Will
would
I
text
text
Hannah.
Hannah the day that we're recording and say, it was through 14, right?
Yes. And join us when that happens for Ba-dum-bum, the Year of the Dresden. Bye, everyone.
Bye.